Let's go. Joseph, do you want to kick us off?
Go for it. Well, thank you everyone for attending. We had massive response to this, a huge kind of hot topic. As a quick intro, I think I know about half of you, but half I don't. I'm Joseph, I run Growth & Company, and we advise investors and founders on growth and help hire the right teams behind them. And creative strategy is becoming a very big part of what we do, as it's a very big part of everyone's job. A couple of months ago, Ara said to me, well, when's our next event on creative strategy? I said, thank you for volunteering to organize it. We ended up organizing an event and then also a creative strategy community. So it's great to be kind of part of that. And we'll talk about that a bit towards the end, but I'll pass to Ara and we can dive in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's panel, How to Build and Scale a World-Class Creative Strategy Function. As Joseph mentioned, the event today is hosted by both No Bad Ideas and Growth & Company. And as a creative strategist myself, I was struggling to find those spaces where people could meet each other and learn from one another. So we created this community along with Growth & Company. As most of you here today know, creative strategy has become one of the biggest levers in paid growth, but how you actually structure it, scale it, and make it work inside a team looks very different from business to business. And that is exactly what we are here to unpack today. So we've got three brilliant panelists with us who've lived and breathed it in very different contexts. So first up, we have Piers, who is the head of content at Mouse. He's been there for 4 years, leading creative across YouTube, TikTok, and Meta, with spend heading towards 8 figures on the platforms. Next up, we have Jade. She is the growth creative lead at Calm. She's been at Calm for 8 years, running a very small but mighty team of 3, managing up to $1 million a month in Meta spend, alongside TikTok and even TV ads. And last but not least, we have Charis. She is head of paid social at Loop Earplugs, a brand that I'm sure many of you admire for their creative strategy. She's been at Loop for 2 years, where about 65 to 70% of spend goes to Meta, 10 to 15% on TikTok, and the rest on smaller channels. And very interestingly, she's actually recently overseen the shift of creative strategy from the paid social function into the creative you can speak to a bit later. So across Mouse, Calm, and Loop, you're going to hear 3 very different approaches to building and scaling creative strategy, and hopefully some great takeaways you can use in your own teams. But I'd love to start off firstly with the creative process and what that looks like for you, Piers, at Mouse, all the way from idea through to launch, and also a bit on why you've chosen to structure it in that way.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. When we were talking about this, it's a little bit different for us because we have so many different product launches, with us trying to go into backpacks, luggage next month, and already having scaled phone cases so heavily. The amount of content we have to produce for non-ad channels is very big, and the way our ads work is also very high production. And if people have seen our ads or our stunts before, they will know that a lot of work and time and resource goes into creating that stuff. So the way we structure it now is that we split out production and post-production, I guess, but we almost call it creative production and creative strategy. So we have a team that focus really heavily on creative production. How do we just get the highest quality production that make our products look as good as possible, have the biggest impact on ads as stunts, and the right skill sets in there. So we've got producers, videographers, photographers that are really best in class for that given talent. And then we split out creative strategy, which is really the optimizing of ads. And we don't split that out by different platforms. We don't have like a Meta team, TikTok team, YouTube team. We have one team that work across them all. And they really focus on what narratives are we telling, how are we split testing, how are we optimizing, so we can constantly have that on loop and we can split them out effectively. But that's generally how the structure happens, and then how the ideation happens for either side.
Interesting. And is all of that you just explained done in-house, or do you also use some agencies?
No, we do everything in-house. We haven't had great experiences with agencies, to be honest. It's not something I ideally would want to do. And the other part is we have so much historic footage that we use in our storytelling and our ads that's super effective across all different platforms. In order to onboard someone onto all of that footage and messaging is really hard. So it's actually easier if everyone understands it really well in-house. So sometimes we'll use the odd freelancer here and there for like specific skill sets on production, but definitely the ideation, direction, and the majority of production all happens in-house.
Okay, good to know. And then obviously you have so many like product launches, phone cases, backpacks, whatever. Do you find managing those in a sprint structure helps?
So this is interesting. I'm not saying this before. For a certain type of business, I think a sprint structure is very effective, and it's the approach I would go for. So if I was selling software or had one main product, I don't know, Jay, how Calm works, but when it's a really clear narrative that you're consistently trying to push and sell, I think a sprint structure really works. The difficulty for us is our edits take a fair amount of time often to put together, and our production process is so lengthy. Working in a sprint type process becomes almost impossible because you have so many different moving parts and a fairly lengthy process to get things done. So we don't work in that way. We really just try and understand what are our biggest commercial priorities at a given time, both in terms of production and creative output for ads, and really just go as hard as that as possible, give ourselves a certain time frame that we think it's achievable in, and then move on to the next thing. Yeah, it's not the way I would work if I had a different product category, but for us, it's kind of the only way that's manageable.
Interesting. That's good to know that you found kind of what works for you, especially with the vast number of products that you have. I mean, I was having a look at Mouse's website, and the product catalog is huge. So yeah, that makes sense. Charis, Loop used to be really famous for running high volume tests. I'd love to know how that worked day to day, and if at all that process is any different now.
Yeah, so definitely in the earlier days, I would say during the hypergrowth phase, our focus was primarily on scaling through volume. So I think at our peak, we were testing around 150 new concepts a month, which translates into roughly 200 new ads launched every single week. So the pace was incredibly high. We worked in a sprint model, briefing, launching, learning, and iterating every 2 weeks. But as we continued to grow and we kind of came towards, let's say, not the end, but we matured in that hypergrowth phase. Meta's algorithm also started evolving, and we started to see that volume alone just wasn't enough. So over the past year, we've really kind of changed our approach and shifted to quality and segmentation rather than just volume. So we're producing fewer concepts, but with stronger creative hypotheses. And that's also allowed us to now work on a monthly sprint model rather than bi-weekly. And as you already mentioned briefly at the beginning, that shift of moving from high volume to more quality and segmentation has also led us to move the creative strategy function out of paid social into our in-house creative studio team. Now, the main reason for that was to really bridge the gap between performance and brand. We noticed that when everything sits in paid social or maybe in performance, it becomes quite isolated, and the customer journey as a whole can start feeling disjointed if creatives look and feel different across channels. So at this stage of our growth, we are prioritizing consistency across touch points, not just for brand perception, but also for performance. So moving creative strategy into studio then lets us align all of our channels creatively and craft a much more cohesive user experience.
Interesting, because I know a lot of brands probably struggle to get that cohesion between paid social and then everything else. So
Exactly.
Moving that is, I'm interested to see how that goes for you. And are you able to share how much or if anything is done via agencies versus in-house at Loop?
Yeah, so we have a combination of that. We have a core creative team, a creative strategy team that sits in-house, that is supported by an in-house creative team as well. But then we have several external agency partners that also help us create our content, and we really select our partner agencies based on what their specialties and capabilities are. So if we're going after maybe testing a certain format, we're really trying to find an agency that does that really well. So rather than having a lot of agencies that do a lot of things, we really try to find specialized creative agencies to work with.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really useful insight, and a little bit different to Piers, even though I know Piers has mentioned he goes after like specialist freelancers, but interesting to hear both sides. Jade, I know the team at Calm is small, but you're producing a huge amount of content to keep up with that, like £1 million spend. How do you actually keep that running in such a small team?
So I'll probably talk quite a bit about like operations like through this, because I think that's the reason why we've been able to like stay so lean. But the way we operate, it's bi-weekly sprints. So we have like the classic iteration, innovation, flywheel. We're testing at the moment up to 200 ads a month across 2 apps, but we've also recently launched web to app. So then the volume increases further and it's going to get more complex with time. And we have like because we're an app, we need like a lot of data. We have a pretty sophisticated in-house setup. So as a team, so we have like the 3 of us on the creative side. We do have 2 media buyers in Meta. We work together to kind of like deep dive into the data and balance that with like the creativity and innovation that we need to do. We do spend a lot of time iterating on what is working. Like many apps, you sort of hone your messaging. We find like our niche messaging that's been very effective for years, and we have to then keep evolving it as trends and language shifts. The way people talked about mental health when Calm started is very different to now, and the wellness space has also exploded, so it's much more competitive. We have to be like really on top of like the trends and the languages people are using. And for us, it's like about balancing speed with structure. So we move fast like when we need to, but like we do have like seasons as well. Like sometimes it's more iterative, other times it's more slow down, be really strategic. So like even though we aim for like bi-weekly sprints,
Is Jade frozen for everyone else as well?
Yeah.
You're back.
oh no,
You're back.
where did you hear me up to? And I can kick off again.
I think you're touching on iterations, if I'm not wrong.
Great. So let me try and remember. Yeah, so we do a lot of iteration, and like we work sort of within seasons. So as much as we have like a sprint, we do evaluate where we're at. Like if we are in more like in the weeds, trying to really like pass out performance on like particular messaging. Other times we're really focusing on like innovation and like really like honing the strategy for like new concepts. But also we do need like a lot of operational depth, because we also translate into 9 other languages. So the app's available in 9 other languages, and then with that we scale top ads in those languages. So we have to operationally like really be buttoned up. 3 of those languages were introduced this year. We didn't have them before, so we've had to like constantly scale up our processes. And then with like multi-app testing, we're expanding into like way more things like at once this year. So I'd say our process overall is like a blend of product insight and awareness of like culture. We also look at competitors like quite a lot, and just being very open to like testing and failing. And because we're lean, I think we're a good example of like what you can do with a lean team, but there are then limits to what's possible. So you have to really prioritize what is the most important thing right now. And then when we want to scale, there might be points where it's like, okay, we need to like grow the team. We're sort of hitting that point now, but we've been able to do a lot with less at the moment.
So I guess that also takes me on to what I was thinking around. With such a lean team, I'd love to know what you look for when hiring, or kind of maybe even like the culture that you make sure that you have within the team to be able to deliver such great outputs with such a small team.
Yeah, so because the team is so small, like everyone needs to be at their best. But because growth creative, it's a bit of a losing game most of the time, and I feel like, you know, most of your ideas don't scale. So for me, like the number one thing is having like, how can we cultivate like psychological safety on the team? We want everyone to take like big swings. We want everyone to like fail safely. And yeah, we want to make sure like people feel encouraged to do that. And like the best ideas don't, like we obviously have our small team of 3. We're not working in the silo. Like ideas can come from everywhere. So media buyers, data analysts, outside partners, the brand team, we do make sure that we're pulling ideas in from like all over the place. And then I guess my job is to like create those conditions where the ideas can be like surfaced, tested quickly. And then another element, like where your team is lean and you need to make the best of it. Like one, you found your like really willing, high performing people. We sort of built everyone to be more full stack. I was probably the first person that was a bit more full stack. I was years ago doing like everything from start to finish, like end to end, including like the data analysis. I still do that to a degree now, but I'm like less in the weeds. So like, for example, my lead designer, he's deep in the performance data too. So he helps shape what we test next. So he has like a little bit of a strategy hat, but he's not like a full creative strategist because we need him to focus on design. And then we have like a junior designer who also is like aiding with some of the like campaign, like because we have a way of like testing. So he helps support my testing campaigns so that I'm not always like uploading the ads and all that kind of stuff. And then obviously like for success, like our metrics are obviously like LTV, CAC, but also like ROAS now that we have like web to app, but we're also tracking like win rate, how much diversity of creative do we have, how quick are we being, and then yeah, like how is everyone feeling, like can we like champion everyone's success? We want everyone to win at the individual level as well as like the team level. And then yeah, finally I guess we do like a lot of self-reflection. So like you kind of have to, when you're in this sort of, we're moving very fast, you often have to stop and be like, are we stagnating? What's blocking us? So at the moment we're like trying to figure out where's the line, because we're in the healthcare space, we have like another element of the business, we have to be careful with what we say, but in some ways that sort of stops where we can lead, like the D2C business. So we have those important conversations, and yeah, just continuing like advocating where we're seeing like cultural trends, like advocating across the business to get those things like in app. For example, really quickly, we saw a trend like many years ago now, like maybe 5-6 years ago, around like bilateral stimulation, like music and audio. It wasn't in any products, but people were talking about it on social. We built music and put it in the app, and then that really started a second layer of growth on top of meditation.
I like that. So I guess also making sure the people in that team are online, they're aware of kind of what's going on around them. And I think also touching on psychological safety, often it's difficult with creative strategists, I find, because you are in the growth function and it's tied to results. Creatives also need time to be creative, and some of your best ideas come from when you're not actually like just trying to hammer loads of creatives and yeah, trying to deliver output. Piers, I'd love to know at Mouse, what's your philosophy on hiring within the function?
Yeah, so I think when someone's setting direction, I'm just looking for like the most talented marketeers, or the most talented creative marketeers, people that really understand the full scope of a business, someone who almost wants to start a business, but like doesn't have the risk-taking love for it, and is super talented. That's the type of person I'm looking for, someone that's just like obsessed with getting ads to work. And if they can be a creative, that's a bonus, because then their feedback, and especially their technical feedback's better. But from a directional standpoint, that's the talent I'm looking for. And I'm really looking for just the best talent I can possibly find. It's the most important thing. Like, it's more important than anything else we talk about in the school. It's like just trying to find the best people makes everyone's life so much easier. So that's the first layer. And then beyond that, I'm basically just looking for best in class talent for their given areas. So if I'm hiring a videographer, I just want to hire the best videographer for that budget range that I can. And I'm willing to take more of a hit on commercial acumen, marketing ability, like general love of performance if they're really good videographer, photographer. And then again, for editing, looking for just the best editors, or the people who want to become the best editors, are really keen to explore how their edits can have a bigger impact on people. Same for graphic designers, but I'm willing to have slightly less commercial acumen there. So from a structural standpoint, that's what it looks like. And then on the point of culture setting, I do get Jay's point about psychological safety, but I want people to be performance focused. I want people to know that's what we're doing here. Like, we're not creating content for fun or the love of it. We're creating content to sell products. And that's actually been the biggest challenge for us at Mouse, is we attract people who love creating content because we have a brand that's very content focused. So the bigger thing for me is to actually get them to love performance and love commercials and what we're trying to do as a business. And I think that is easy to do if you spend a lot of time with these people and just set it as their clear measure of success or failure. So yes, you want psychological safety, yes, you want creativity, but I have actually had bigger issues with people being performance focused. So that's the culture I want to set more, and that's why I focus on more.
Charis, I saw you nodding along as well to that last point. Are you in the same camp?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I look for people to join a creative team, I look for people who really have that growth mindset, who understand performance marketing. I personally would prefer someone who has a strong background in that and maybe a less of a strong background when it comes to, being very commercial, similar to what Pierre said. Like, I really need you to have that mindset. I need you to be hungry. I need you to be curious. I need you to be willing to figure out what it takes to make these ads happen. And I think that for me is the main thing. I think also within the area of creative strategy, like, this is a role that has become very popular very recently. It hasn't existed for a very long time. And so it's difficult to find those profiles and people who maybe have multiple years of experience. So what I also really look for on top of someone with a performance background is maybe someone who has a hobby or a side hustle that has something to do with creativity. So then maybe you're a paid social specialist, but you are interested in videography, or you have a side hustle in, I don't know, photography or something. Those are a little bit the type of people that I'm looking for. I need to know the performance is there, and then creative kind of is the layer that comes on top of that for me.
Just to add to that point, I actually saw a really interesting LinkedIn post the other day about recruitment and looking at CVs and really trying to pick out what Charis is saying there around people having other exploits, doing other things. I think it's such a good sign of, even for a creative, them having their own channel, even if it's a bit rubbish, and they're trying to grow it, means a lot to me, because I know that they want to have impact. They're driven for more, and people like that will be game changing versus people who are just looking for a job and want to do their 9 to 5 and go home and stop thinking about it. And I think you can pick out elements of that, like, have they started a side hustle? Have they failed starting a business in the past? Right. Have they started their own channel? Are they doing things like this? Like, it's stuff like that, I think, really shows what someone's like.
So really looking for that intersection of someone that gets performance in the data, they show creativity in some form, but then also that hunger to just keep growing and learning. And I guess, maybe not having the commercial side as much, but they want to kind of really try and better the business in some way. I'm really glad you touched on that, because I did see a question pop up around how do you actually spot those people. So looking for side hustles is a great shout. So sounds like you're all very deliberate when it comes to the people side, but I guess once you've got the people, you've got the structure that we touched on at the beginning. I think the tools that we're using obviously matter. AI tools are coming out every day. I get messaged every day with a new tool being launched on creative strategy, but actually making them work, I think, can be a bit of a struggle from my opinion. But I would love to know, Jade, for you at Calm, how does AI fit into your workflow, and has it helped you in any way?
Yeah, so we sort of kicked off, I'd say mid-year, we got really into trying to ramp up and test various AI tools across the organization. And primarily our team, we use AI to make us faster and sharper. So we use it as a supporting tool, not it doesn't own a process in and of itself. So storyboarding, and a briefing, we've got some touch points where we use Poppy AI. A lot of people seem to use it in our space anyways, and we use it to build a ton of context. So whether we want to build context around the brand, specific elements of the product, or various apps that we have, specific ad buckets that we are sort of briefing into, it allows us to kind of master and hone the types of briefs that we want to do for creative categories. So whether we're doing UGC, or we're doing a more experiential, very calm classic type ad, and we're trying to build on that, or we might use it for competitor analysis, because Poppy, you can just drop in the ad and get it to transcribe a competitor ad. So even if it's not a direct competitor, you can look at what are the mechanisms at play, because obviously I can sit there and watch an ad and analyze the elements of it, but it's actually quicker to get AI to do it for you. You need to hone your prompting though. I wouldn't trust AI unless I'd trained it quite well. But I think it's also, to that point, it's very easy to get into a trap with AI and think it's making you more efficient when it's not. So I think you can be really discerning and figure out if you're saving time or if it's not serving you. So it might allow pre-production to be more efficient, but then if you're all it's then doing is increasing the like potential production and you have a gap there, like it's not going to serve you in the same way. So you've got to really reflect on like what is helpful. Another thing we do is like AI generated video and static for our brand, as it's an app brand. It's a little bit more straightforward for us to do that because we don't have a physical product. So if it makes sense for your brand, you can sort of utilize that. And app ads tend to be a bit more of a wild west anyway. There's a lot of like weird stuff out there that's different to like more like physical products. So yeah, you can see some more wild stuff like in our category. So we have a little bit more creative play there. So we do use a little bit of AI generated.
Interesting. I like your take as well on it kind of gives you a sense of false efficiency. Unless I think you find a tool that works, or if you're actually really good at prompting. I definitely think there's times where you can just be prompting away and asking it to repeat itself. But if you don't know what you're doing, then yeah, that could have maybe been done quicker by doing it yourself. Piers, how about you at Mouse? Have you found it actually helps the team?
So we use AI from a pre-production standpoint a lot with ideation and art direction, so like to actually build out what we want something to look like or what we want something to play like, whether it's Sora, VO3, ChatGPT, and a little bit with ideation. And then similarly with script writing and ideation from a creative strategy post-production side, we do use it, and we have found it useful. Like it's definitely sped up efficiencies. We still haven't found anything that really works from an execution standpoint, so really works from writing a winning script. It does help us a lot once we put in a load of winning stuff that we've had before to start helping us optimize it or come up with new ideas based on a similar structure. But generally speaking, the original ideas, we haven't found anything super useful from execution. And then actual production is just not there yet for us because of the physical product element. I think it's not far off, but the amount of work we'd have to put into VO3 and others to even just get them to spit out a scene with a mouse phone case that works really well or a backpack would be quicker for us to just film ourselves currently. So we don't use it there. And then we use a few AI tools from a voiceover and internationalization standpoint. 11 Labs is the biggest one that we found good. But again, even then, the voiceover is not great, and we still use real people voiceovers. But it's good at translation and it's good at adding in sentences here and there. So there's a lot we do, but it's more from an efficiency and support function than it is actually execution at the moment.
Interesting. So it's integrated into the workflow, but it's not exactly where you want it to be. So if you could, have your dream AI,
I'd be able to do a lot more. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. Charis, what about you at Loop? Has it helped you make any winning ad creatives? And then also as a side note to all of you, I know we're talking a lot about the content creation side, but if there's any tools that you use when it comes to like scraping forums or I don't know, analyzing reviews or whatever it might be, if you have any examples of that as well, that would be great.
Yeah. So I think it's quite similar to what Piers was saying at Loop as well. So when it comes to asset creation, we've tested quite a few AI tools in, I would say, the last year or so, but so far none of them produce what I would personally call a genuine winner. In that context, the way I see it is that an AI tool will only add real value for us if it can outperform the work of our existing team with the same or ideally less time and effort from our side. On top of that, I will think it should be able to produce ads that we can successfully scale across regions and also maintain a slower than average burn rate. We haven't been able to find a tool yet that has hit that standard for us, or at least, not consistently. But then in the context of like workflows, we do use AI to make our process faster and smoother. So we have tools like, for example, Motion that help us generate creative insights and summarize them, tools that help us build, for example, copy variations. So that's where I think AI at the moment really shines. Also, when it comes to ideation, getting inspiration, we use tools like Atria, we've used Foreplay in the past, that just make it easy for you to spot what other brands are doing and maybe what's working, what isn't working. But when it comes to actual breakthrough creatives, the kind that scale globally, I still think that, human insight, context, and storytelling really make the difference. And I think AI can help us get there faster, but you can't really replace the people or the craft.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad you say that. I think there's such a buzz around it. And I know for me in my role, I've definitely tried to explore new tools, try to see what efficiencies can be made with tools. But yeah, I'm with you. It's not quite there yet. And I think the value you get as well from sometimes just going through a forum yourself to like extrapolate all the info isn't always there with the tools, and it doesn't necessarily sum it up the way that you would want it summed up. But Piers, you were going to say something.
Yeah, sorry, you can tell it's great. It's just because we had a question. There's one thing I forgot is this isn't so much to do with creative strategy, but I massively recommend Ad Manage AI for people that are uploading meta ads on scale. It's a game changer. If anyone hasn't used it, it doesn't help you like decide what to turn off and keep running. We still do all that manually to decide what's winning, how we optimize, like how we structure different creative campaigns. But literally from an admin upload perspective, it's unreal.
Awesome. I've seen.
Pay you for that.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Pay you for that.
Okay, cool. So AI is being tested. It's not necessarily always sticking, even though it's integrated in some workflows. But I'd like to maybe take it back to basics a bit and think about whether you're using AI or not. We're always told that you need the right creatives, you know, across the funnel. And on top of that, we need to think about the seasonality element and then how that's all tied together. So I think thinking about that balance can be quite tricky for brands. Charis, how do you manage that at Loop?
So because the engine at Loop is so big, it's actually quite a complex process that needs a lot of planning. But I think you could probably break it down into 3 main steps. I would say step number 1 would be really map out the funnel, go back to basics and figure out what the different funnels look like. Then step 2 for me is forecasting, and step 3 would be operationalizing, if that's even a word. But I'll dive into all of those a little bit deeper. So for step 1, mapping the funnel, what I do at the start of each year is I design funnel map for each region, right? So I outline the customer journey, all the key touch points within paid social, and in that I add local nuances like shopping behaviors or seasonal peaks. And I think that's a really important foundation, especially if you operate across regions, because the way people shop in Australia, for example, is very different to how they shop in the UK or in the US. And that's going to dictate very much how you talk to them and how you shape your ad strategy. So by doing that upfront work, we know exactly kind of what we need to communicate to our consumers at different stages of the funnel and throughout different seasons in the year per region. Once I've done that, I go look at historical performance data, I go look at our revenue goals, and I forecast spend levels for each region. Once I have my spend levels for each region, I can reverse engineer how many assets I will need to reach those targets and break that down by funnel stage. Because this is all based on historical data or present data, I always add in a bit of an efficiency multiplier, which is the assumption that we'll keep improving the production of high-performing creative assets. So, for example, I put in a multiplier of 1.25, which is my assumption that with every batch that we create, our creatives are going to be 25% more efficient. Then the third step is operationalizing. So I pull all of that information basically into one Excel. It's one big master sheet. It has every region in there, every stage of the funnel, and it will tell you exactly how many assets of which format more or less I need for that stage of the funnel, that region. And then I work very closely with our creative strategy team to identify, okay, what strategic tests are we going to run each month in each region? And once all of that is aligned, then they go off and they brainstorm and they idea and they oversee production. But it's we really kind of build that strategy from the ground up. And as I said, I create that initial funnel map at the beginning of the year, but obviously that's something that we then revisit, as well as the asset forecast. We revisit that every single month, and it's just kind of like an ongoing thing. So it's really a blend of data, structure, and creative collaboration, all working together to make sure that we're not running blind.
Wow, super useful. And you've just laid it out for every business that's joined this call.
Oh, for free.
Yeah. Within that as well, so you set that strategy at the top and then kind of discuss that with the creative strategist, and they help you bring that to life.
Yeah.
Within that as well, do you think about like new versus iterations? Is that included in that mix?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that also, like at the beginning, when I first started doing this, I said, okay, we're going to do 80% new concepts, 20% iterations. But what I noticed is that you really need to evaluate that on a month-by-month basis, because there will be some months where all your creators are doing well and you need way more iterations than the month before. So we have a general baseline, as with everything else. But again, it fluctuates on a monthly basis.
Okay, great. That's really useful to know. Jade, I saw you nodding along. Are you in agreement with
what
you're saying?
Yeah, we kind of obviously we have like moments of like we have seasons that come, like January is our busiest month, but like the kind of iteration and new concept, we sort of have like a rough, like it's depending on where we're at. Like right now we're probably like 60% iteration, 40% like innovation, but like that changes, and you have to evaluate where you're at. And I agree with like the month by month basis, like you see where you're at and you prioritize accordingly. So I just wanted to plus one that, like, it's good to have like a general baseline and a goal, but know that it will shift based on, you've got to evaluate where you're at in the sort of sprint run.
And then when it comes to the funnels, you look at it in a similar way at Calm?
It's probably less, like we have a lot of evergreen, just because like, well, obviously we have like peaks that we plan for, like BFCM, like Mental Health Awareness Month, and like some other like key moments through the year. But we organize our creative around like core need states, and like obviously we do look at where they are at in the funnel, so like the level of awareness. Like a good example right now, because we've launched web to app, where we don't need to give everything away within the ads and like create an ecosystem of ads that like really builds like education and awareness. We can be more upper funnel and like curious. So we have like high curiosity ads. We have ones that are like deeper and educational. So we sort of try and hit all those pillars like within our strategy. So like we're more accountable for that than like planning. Like we sort of do it from the bottom up versus Charis's way, which is kind of interesting. But I think also we have objectives set by like our like team lead, and we make sure that that sort of filters in. But we generally focus evergreen, and then we have like huge points where we start testing into like core messaging for like key seasons for us.
Okay, brilliant insights. Piers, I know from conversations we've had in the past, Mouse takes a slightly different approach, doesn't it?
In as much as we don't think about funnel stages that much, to be honest, like we find that just the best creative wins at all funnel stages. If something's really, really good and a brilliant ad, we find it performs everywhere. And the other thing is seasonality isn't a big thing for us in terms of classic seasonality of campaigns running. There are massive times of the year for us, like iPhone launch is bigger than any time of the year. That's the same for other phone launches. There's a couple of times that are quite big for backpack. Black Friday is massive for us, but we don't really view it as a big time for creative. Our best performing ads perform best on Black Friday, not Black Friday ads. And we just like chuck in a little bit of messaging, a sticker, some still ads, but like people just need to know it's X% off and it's Black Friday, and then have the ad run as normal. So we don't view it as a big time creatively. So from a seasonality and funnel perspective, that's the difference. But in terms of testing creatives across different funnels, it's very similar to what Charis is saying, in that we will look at it based on how much we're spending and what we want to prioritize, and then how many creatives we want in a given campaign. Because I saw someone ask a question like, what's the optimal amount of creatives, and will you accept just having some that are low spending? It's really hard to answer that question without talking about what platform it is on and what budget you're running in that given campaign or ad set. So we have very different markers for how many ads we want live depending on what we're spending, and also what we're spending determines how much we prioritize given creatives. So for example, the iPhone launched 2 weeks ago. The amount we're spending in iPhone specific campaigns right now is incomparable to anywhere else. So that is where we're putting all our focus. We don't have enough creative resource to also be optimizing backpacks and Google campaigns and Samsung campaigns. And we're also happy to run loads and loads of creatives because our budgets are huge at the moment. But that isn't always the case at all times of the year. So it's really hard to say what the best way of doing that is, but we approach it in a very similar way to what Charis is saying, trying to prioritize on a monthly basis, look at it by spend, do some forecasting as to what we expect to happen, and make a decision on what we need as a result.
And when it comes to, I know you said you don't split it out by funnel stages. Out of interest, have you previously tried splitting out in that way and it didn't work, or have you just found that there's nothing wrong with what you're doing at the minute?
We do run different funnel stages. I'm more talking about the creative.
The creative, sorry, yeah.
The campaign structure.
Yeah.
this is like something we found, but it might not work for everyone. We don't find awareness campaigns useful for us, like running for video views or awareness. We actually find awareness better just targeting conversions, but spending more money and viewing them as awareness and knowing that Google and Meta won't track them as much. And what I'm saying is we've tried like, oh, this would be a great thing for awareness and it might get more people to watch. And then this might be a really good thing for someone lower down in the funnel. And they have not performed better than just what is the best ad for what you're trying to get people to do, which is buy a particular product in a particular campaign. That's what we found. And yeah, we have done testing on that for us.
Awesome, interesting. I like how there's different approaches, so very business specific. But I guess kind of tying it back to Meta, the platform does keep changing under our feet, so it keeps us on our toes. How are you adapting to those changes that keep coming up? Jade, I know Meta is automating more and more. How does that affect your work, and are you concerned at all for how that might affect the team in the future?
Not concerned per se, but obviously like it's not a hot take, but like I think creative continues to be like the biggest lever in the auction for us. But the focus for us now is like scaling more creative diversity, because I know Meta's sort of doubling down on like needing very high differentiation of creative. So we still do, we've kind of reduced it a little bit, but like we do a lot of very deep change one tiny thing iterative work, and I think we might need to change that slightly with time as part of the shift, because otherwise in our testing campaign it's just going to score them all the same, and we're going to keep getting the same results over and over. And so I think we need to work on like higher differentiation within like designs as we're doing iterative work. So I think there's like a lot there that is kind of interesting, and we've started sort of like trying to figure out a plan for that, because obviously production can get more complex as a result of like needing that high differentiation. So yeah, we're continuing to think about how to get better at that. And you know, sometimes it's like go back to basics a bit and then sort of like scale back up in testing at least. And then for us as well, because we've introduced web to app and a lot of app products, like for many years, we're actually a bit behind on like having a web to app funnel, because we had to do like a lot of engineering work because the product's been alive for so long that like there was a lot of engineering work that was required to actually make it viable for us. And like even we only launched it maybe a couple of weeks ago, and like this is a huge incremental audience for us. Like even when we look by placement, we're getting a ton of scale on like Instagram stories, which isn't something that would scale in app ads, which is like really great that we can have like incremental. So I think like when you're for an app business anyway, like continuing to like build on like different funnel types is going to be like a key thing for us. But yeah, I think like teams that will kind of win are the ones that sort of stay pretty intentional. So like building your scalable creative system and like test, like I think like testing relentlessly, at least for an app business, makes sense. So like having a high volume of creative and keeping diversity high. So like that's where we're focused at the moment.
I guess hearing that makes me wonder, if you had to start the function fresh, knowing everything you know now, in about one sentence, what would you decide to build first?
It's so practical, but I'm just like build a system that makes sense. So like if you are starting from nothing, like you just need clear names, clean file system, like have all your things organized. And then I think like if I was starting my team from scratch, I want like a creative ops person. Like honestly, like I think if you're not naturally organized, and like I am, but I'm kind of outgrowing those things. And like, I think making sure that your team is organized and like keeping things moving along feels key. Super simple, but yeah, I think like start early thinking about how it will scale up. Otherwise it will start to fall apart when you start scaling.
Awesome. And Piers, what would number one be for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with Jay's points, to be honest, or at least what I found. I would be purely focusing on talent. I would just be trying to find the best possible creative I can. I wouldn't care at all about how messy it is to begin with. I would just want, like, how can we create the best possible ads and who's going to help me do that? That would be the only thing I'm thinking about to start with.
And Charis, we have divided opinions. What would your take be?
I would say definitely infrastructure. For me, that means playbooks, naming conventions, workflow systems. So, part of that is operations, what Jay just mentioned, and just a very clear way to capture learnings. I think that for me is the main thing. I think without those foundations, growth gets messy very fast. You end up repeating the same experiments and losing valuable insights just because you don't know whether you did it before and what the outcome was. And I think once you have that structure in place, everything else becomes scalable. Your learnings will compound, your speed will increase, and creative testing turns from trial and error into a real growth engine.
Love that. So a bit of a 2v1 situation, but I think all opinions are valid. That's what we like to see. So now a couple of quick fire questions, 1-word answers for each, so we have enough time for audience questions as well. So starting with you, Piers, what is one brand that you think is doing meta creative brilliantly?
I think Suri are doing a decent job on creative. I know they're growing fast and I think their stuff's good. I think Get Brick, if anyone's seen any of their content, is really, really strong. I don't actually know how effective it is. I just think their creative is really strong. Interestingly, just on that point quickly, we don't just look at competitors. Like, our view is we're competing with anyone posting content online. Like, people are scrolling through reels or flicking through stories or scrolling through Facebook or wanting to watch a YouTube video. We don't view our competition as other ad makers because we think we're very good at it. We view our competition as creators and things that people want to watch. So we're really trying to create stuff that converts but people actually want to watch. And that's so, like, a lot of our references come from creators. They don't come from other companies. We'll like steal stuff that's gone viral from a storytelling creator.
I really like that, and I think the Get Brick creators that I've seen are very good at telling a story and they're very engaging, so you kind of continue watching it just to kind of see what it's about. I like that. So Charis, what about you in terms of meta creative or general creative that has inspired you from a brand?
Surreal, the cereal brand. I think they're really on point. They have very simple ads, but especially the copy and just the references to culture and current events is so on point that, yeah, they just win every single time.
Yeah, they're very good at being reactive, aren't they? I think anything cultural that happens, they're there. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And how about you, Jade?
For me, it's Mob. I actually finally converted to a paid user this year after following their journey for like many years. I just think they have fun narratives, but I can tell they have like a very, like, I enjoy how methodical they are with their strategy, and I enjoy getting their ads. So that's mine.
I'm not sure if you've had the same, but the ads that I've been shown by them, the diversity is huge. Yeah. They're doing everything possible to try and get you to convert, which obviously succeeded in your case. Okay, so that wraps us up on the panel. We have about 10 minutes left for audience questions. Shreya, Nicola, do you want to read out some of the questions that our audience have been asking?
Yeah, thanks, Zara. So we had a question specifically for Piers. So when you say the best ads work across all stages of the funnel, do you structure campaigns around awareness, but put all creative messaging types in there, even if direct response?
We don't structure any campaigns for awareness. So that's the first, like, we run a huge amount of top of the funnel, but we don't run it for awareness. We won't be targeting video views or watch time. We're always targeting conversions, but we'll just be doing that to a much colder audience and spending a lot of money to reach more. And we found that far more effective than running actual awareness campaigns. And then from top of the funnel to bottom of the funnel within that, yes, we find that the best creatives just win at all stages of the funnel. It doesn't mean that always the one that's winning at top is winning at the bottom. Sometimes it varies, but it's not something ever that's been created with bottom of the funnel in mind. And we don't find like a quick 15-second ad wins at the bottom of the funnel because all someone needs is a reminder. We still find our storytelling is more effective there. I think one thing to note with our particular product though is we sell in a very saturated market at high price points. So we're not like we have to do a very big job of selling. We're not a unique product in the same way as certain other products are, and we're also not a cheap product that's a spur of the moment decision. We sell £250 backpacks, £70 phone cases.
Okay, awesome. So another question, do you have a cheat sheet for naming conventions or any tools that you use to be more organized and capture learnings?
Jade, Charis, do you want to take this? Because I know infrastructure and organization were big ones.
Not for me.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Charis?
I'm trying to think, do I have a cheat sheet? Like here I am preaching about being organized, but I actually don't have a cheat sheet where I have all of this written out. But I think for naming conventions, what really helped us is just think about, bottom line, what data do you want to see? What do you want to have insights on? And make sure that you build your naming convention based on that. In terms of tools that we use, I mentioned a couple already, Atria, Foreplay, Motion, for ideation. And there's so many within the workflows that I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, we assume that we used to have very deep naming conventions because we would then have, we use Tableau because we have like very deep like data insights at Calm. And so we used to have like naming conventions, which would like go very granular into like different things so we could then analyze it. But like we actually recently in the last month got Motion, so like they have like an AI tagging thing that has actually just like made my life about 10,000 times easier because it's already categorizing things in the way I was manually. So like that is a great help because you can then find trends within your creative buckets, whether it's like your hook messaging or like overall messaging themes, like your execution style, whether it's more like cinematic or it's like very lo-fi, like UGC. What was the rest of your question? I've kind of forgotten. There was like 2 parts to the question.
Oh, yeah. Hang on 2 seconds. Oh, so the question was, yeah, do you have a cheat sheet for naming conventions or any tools that you use to be more organized and capture learnings?
So, and then I'd say in terms of organization, I think it just depends on like what works for your team. But like we in terms of like what tools we used to use Asana, we now use Jira because like across the org, that's what we use. So our briefs move through like a Kanban board. We then put everything into like literally just a Google Sheet. That Google Sheet has all the creative in with the messaging that like the ad copy that we're going to use. It gets uploaded into Ad Managed and then launched. Super simple. And then we bring then stuff back into our kind of like, we declare winners. It goes into the same tracker, so we know what's winning, what those metrics are. And then like we make recommendations to the buyers based on like what we're seeing on like placement behavior, things like that. So we try and capture as much detail as possible for like decision making for like our BAU campaigns.
Okay, awesome. So Charis, we've had a follow-up question. Could you please elaborate on creative forecasting and how you decide what types of creative are needed for stages of the funnel?
Okay. Basically, the main thing that I look at is historical data. So I'm in a position where obviously we have ran a lot of ads with Loop, so there's a lot of data that we're sitting on. And on a monthly basis, I work together with our media agency. We basically generate a report that tells us, okay, these are the angles that produced, X results. So we look at certain KPIs and we do that on an angle level, regional level, but also on a product level. And by looking at that, we kind of figure out like, okay, these are, for example, the use cases that work, these are the products that work, and then we look at a second layer, which is, okay, which format within this use cases worked, or which formats work best for this product, and that's basically what we use as a basis to then forecast how much of that we would need, or how much of a certain mix we would need to reach our target. So it's very much based on historical data.
Okay, awesome. So Michelle has asked, what are the most impactful tests that you've had?
Piers, do you want to kick us off?
I mean, some of them are more on the paid social budgeting side. I probably won't go into those in detail. From a creative side, the thing that's probably made the biggest difference to us in the last 18 months is hiring creatives purely for short form, really, really high quality storytelling short form creators. And our meta performance has dramatically increased as a result. And we've managed to get a lot more out of that channel. It's not like a specific test. It's just really hiring people that are amazing at that particular channel. And it's also drastically uplifted our organic. Like we've grown 270,000 followers in the last 18 months, 2 years. And both of those have fed off each other. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing for us probably in recent times.
And Raf has just asked on that, where do you find these creators?
Yeah, I mean, that is the magic question, and that's very hard. A lot of like work and connection building, to be honest. Like just being obsessed by the space yourself, like meeting creators, like spending a lot of time on Instagram, a lot of time on LinkedIn, and then asking people for recommendations. It's really, really hard though. And we've struggled, and we haven't got that many.
Do you have like a team that is focused on that outreach, or is that something that's done within the creative? Okay.
No, I wish we had more, but you kind of need to have someone who's obsessed with that element. So you always need someone who's like into creative, who's into recruitment as well. It's a complicated one that we're still trying to work out, and it's so important. We are going to try and work it out. The one thing I would say is if you can get someone really good, they can enable people to be really good. If you hire really good editors, for example, not everyone needs to be that creator. That creator can enable a lot more output if they're very skilled. So you can extrapolate it if with really good editors, but you do need those initial hires, and it is really, really tricky.
Awesome. Charis, Jade, anything you want to touch on with that, or we might have time for one more question as well? No?
Well, the way we structure testing, I think someone might have asked in the chat earlier, but like our team, only testing we do per se is like our creative testing campaign. So like we structure that. Well, we have many now because we have like multiple products and stuff, but we manage those testing campaigns, but we don't do like other tests, like the buyers that tend to focus on more like specific audience testing, things like that. So we just keep a clean read on our like creative testing. And then one thing we are going to do, which kind of goes into like the creator, we have struggled with creators, but we are going to do another test. We're actually going to use the circle. We're going to work with them for like a 3-month pilot to try and figure out, because we know it can like aid organic growth, but we just need to see what that looks like within our overall sort of like stack of like creative types. And what else was I going to say? And then yeah, we'll see like what the results are for that. But like we have struggled with like UGC and like influencer creators in the past, but we just need to like kind of double down on it and try and figure out what works for us. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Awesome. Maybe time for one more question. Trey, if you've got one lined up.
Yep, I do. So, well, this is more of a two-parter, but how do you scale to other markets, and how do you balance production efficiencies whilst ensuring local market relevance?
Who wants to take this one? I know you're all in multiple markets, so
I can go quickly from a practical standpoint. We obviously, the product is in like, I guess 10 languages total. We do have like a localization team, so like we translate the whole product like in context, very high quality. I think that's really important. Then that the ads, you can just get stuff translated and run it, but like we have like we have language consultants that do in context reviews to make sure that the ads actually are relevant to the market and like the types of ads that they're used to seeing. So we do a lot of editing on our creatives. We don't just straight up translate them as is. So that's sort of a practical thing that I can offer. I think, you know, if you can work with people that can make sure that it is relevant to your market. I feel like Charis mentioned that earlier as well. It does make a huge difference. You can't just cut and paste a lot of the time.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much everyone for joining. That's all we have time for today. Thank you so much to our panelists, Charis, Jade, Piers, for sharing your insights. I've definitely learned a lot, and I really hope everyone else who's joined the call has learned a lot as well. We'll send around a quick feedback email along with the recording, and if there's any other topics that you want us to explore in future sessions, please do let us know. And yeah, that's it from us. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.